Wash your hands.
And if you can, stay at home.
We at DW
are here for you.
We are working tirelessly to keep you informed on all of our platforms.
We're all in this together.
And together,
we'll make it through.
Stay safe, everybody.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Please, stay safe.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic. And as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. Welcome to Eagle News International. And now to the news. India recorded its biggest surge in COVID-19 cases to date, with 40,000 new cases and 681 deaths in the last 24 hours, the biggest single-day jump. The latest deaths bring the total fatalities to 27,497. India, home to some of the planet's most densely packed cities, is the third nation to hit 1 million cases after the United States and Brazil, although the numbers of deaths in those two countries are far higher. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society said that India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh are together, fast becoming the next epicenter of the virus. Goa on Thursday evening became the latest state to go under lockdown, imposing a 3-day shutdown and a nighttime curfew until August 10. Chief Minister Pramod Sawant said too many people were stepping out to meet people at parties, and there was a low level of awareness and sensitivity. And the coronavirus is spreading out of control in Hong Kong, with a record 100 new cases confirmed. The finance hub's leader said Sunday as she tightened social distancing measures to tackle the sudden surge in infections. Take a look.
12宗嘅情況係非常之嚴峻，而且係未有受控嘅跡象。所以今早咧，我就再次召開咗高層嘅會議。嚟到去討論應變嘅工作，同時間呢，我哋亦都獲悉今日稍後時間由衛生防護中心公布嘅最新嘅確診個案呢，將會係超過100宗，亦都係喺疫情以嚟單日最高嘅數字。咁啊，相信市民呢會更加係擔心同埋關注嘅。
Ms. Lam announced new social distancing measures last week, shutting many businesses, including bars, gyms, and nightclubs, and ordering everyone to wear masks on public transport. Restaurants were ordered to only offer takeout services in the evenings. And on Sunday, Ms. Lam announced even more regulations, including plans to make it compulsory to wear masks inside any public indoor venue, and a new order for non-essential civil servants to work from home. Now, as hospital wards fill, officials are also scrambling to build a further 2,000 isolation rooms on Barren Island near the city's Disneyland Resort to monitor and treat those who test positive, according to Ms. Lam. Hong Kong was already mired in recession when a pandemic hit, thanks to the U.S.-China trade war and months of political unrest last year. The new partial lockdown has compounded the economic misery now. Meanwhile, Australia's second biggest city will make it compulsory to wear a mask in public, according to authorities, as Melbourne steps up efforts to bring a coronavirus outbreak under control. Victoria State, which includes Melbourne, now has nearly 3,000 active cases of COVID-19. After a further 363 infections were reported on Sunday, despite a 10-day lockdown. Premier Daniel Andrews said more than 5 million people in Melbourne and neighboring Mitchell Shire would be required to wear a mask or other face coverings in public spaces from midnight Wednesday into Thursday. He said most of us wouldn't leave home without our keys, and we wouldn't leave our home without our mobile phone. He told a news conference, and then he added, you won't be able to leave home without your mask, and then wear it where it's absolutely essential to stop the spread of this virus. Failure to comply with the new rule will mean a 200 Australian dollar fine, or 140 US dollars. Though Mr. Andrews said common sense discretion would be applied to activities such as running or visiting a bank. Bandanas and scarves will be acceptable as face coverings until the state can boost supply of masks, according to Mr. Andrews, adding that anything was better than no face covering at all. The Department of Foreign Affairs reported on Monday that 135 more Filipinos abroad got infected with the coronavirus, bringing the total tally to 9,136. In its latest case bulletin, the DFA said the new cases were mostly from the Middle East. It also reported 39 new recoveries and 10 new fatalities. Now these bring the total number of recoveries to 5,360 and the tally of deaths to 644. Meanwhile, a total of 3,132 Filipinos abroad are still undergoing treatment. And staying in the Philippines, Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. honored the 88 deceased overseas Filipino workers whose remains have returned home from Saudi Arabia at the Heroes Welcome held at the Villamor Air Base. Secretary Locsin offered his sincerest condolences to the families of the deceased OFWs and recalled their immeasurable sacrifice for the sake of their families.
Bello, we at the DFA already lost one ambassador to COVID, and she was one of the finest diplomats in the world, admired the world over. This is a matter close to my heart. I know the fear, the risk, and the deprivation that overseas Filipino workers have to endure in order to seek a better life for their families and loved ones. And for these men and women, they have paid the ultimate price for earning a paycheck for family back home. We call them our modern heroes, but heroes are nothing to what they are. The elder sister and brother who goes abroad scratch for a living for their siblings and their parents. Because if they stayed home, they'd scratch and earn nothing. They are the wives separated from husbands, and husbands separated from wives. The mothers separated from their kids, the fathers from the same. All to give family back home the chance they never had back here by earning enough out there. And it doesn't stop. Nor should it stop, because the right to travel is supreme. More so the right to travel to earn enough to live. It is the highest democratic right to vote with your feet when conditions back home, political and economic, are intolerable, and you must walk away from poverty and indignity back home to a decent wage and an honorable life abroad.
Meanwhile, the Department of Labor and Employment said on Monday over 95,000 repatriated overseas Filipino workers have already been transported back to their respective homes. In a statement, DOLE said that the latest batch of OFWs took their rights back to their respective provinces last Saturday after they all tested negative for COVID-19. DOLE Secretary Silvestro Bello assured that the department will exhaust all means to help OFWs regain jobs they lost abroad due to the pandemic. The DOLE has developed a tracking system called OFW Assistance Information System, or OASIS, for its command center to facilitate orderly and smooth repatriation and assistance to returning and outbound Filipino workers. Meanwhile, President Duterte will be physically present at the Batasang Pambansa complex to deliver his fifth State of the Nation address on July 27, according to Malacanang. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said President Duterte has decided to show up while allowing only a limited number of 50 guests in the venue.
I can confirm for the first time that the President will be physically present in Batasan, no? Pagdating po ng SONA sa 27 ng buwan na ito. At nakaschedule po ang rehearsal at patuloy po ang preparasyon. Ang advice sa mga protesters, well, sila rin naman po yung pumupula sa gobyerno. Sila yung nagsasabi na hindi daw ginamagawa ng sapat na pamamaraan para mapabagal ang pagkalat ng sakit. Pero tingin ko malinaw sa kasing linaw ng sinag ng araw na ang pagtitipon-tipon po ay magre-resulta sa mas mabilis na pagkalat ng sakit na ito. Pwede naman po magprotesta rin online. So sana po magsimpleng halimbawa sa lahat. Iwasan po muna natin ang pagtipon-tipon para po sa ating mga sarili, para sa ating mga anak. Online protest po kung po pwede.
Secretary Roque also said a schedule has been set for rehearsals but did not mention the date. And last week, Senate President Tito Soto said the number of attendees will be limited to a maximum of 50 people who will all be subjected to rapid antibody testing. He also said 25 seats will be reserved for the Executive Department, 13 for the House of Representatives, and 12 for the Senate. According to Secretary Roque, President Duterte's fifth SONA will focus on the national government's response to the prevailing coronavirus disease or COVID-19 pandemic. Secretary Roque also said President Duterte will also talk about his priorities for his remaining 2 years in office. In a related news, instead of gathering to hold protest actions, PNP or Philippine National Police Chief General Archie Gamboa called on protesters to hold their gathering online. General Gamboa said online protests on President Duterte's fifth State of the Nation address on July 27 would accede to the health protocols being implemented with a guideline prohibiting mass gathering.
Alam mo naman natin na ang PNP is talagang palaging maximum tolerance. No? But doon naman sa may mga planong magprotesta, again, lalo na dito sa SONA, nakikiusap lang kami na kung pwede, just do it online because these are not ordinary times. No? No, anyway, malawak naman yung hagip ng social media. So they can always air and probably people will listen to them through social media. No? Kasi yun nga, iwasan nga natin itong mass gathering kasi meron tayong ibang requirement ngayon, no? Which is yung health protocols natin.
The SONA is delivered by the President of the Philippines every year to report the state of the country, unveil the government's agenda for the coming year, and may also propose to Congress certain legislative measures. All right, Scotland has seen its largest COVID case rise for almost a month. Joining us live from Scotland, here's Caroline Kennedy. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, Alma.
Hello. So, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. So, Scotland sees a second wave of COVID-19 cases as numbers have been increasing. So, according to the BBC, over 20 new cases have just been detected in Scotland for the second day in a row now. From the 18th of July, Scotland saw the biggest jump in numbers as 21 new cases of COVID-19 have came onto our numbers since the 21st of June. Another 23 more cases were reported as of yesterday. Although our First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has said that it will still be a low number of new cases, a fluctuation was to be expected as the majority of positive tests still remains under 1%. With that being said, though, no new deaths have been registered within Scotland after the positive test for the virus. However, the Scottish Government has said that it will still be a low number of new cases, a fluctuation was to be expected as the majority of positive tests still remains under 1%. With that being said, though, no new deaths have been registered within Scotland after the positive test thus meaning that only one death in the past 11 days has been registered for the measuring of proposes. With the response to the latest figures, Ms. Sturgeon has tweeted that this is still a low number of cases. A fluctuation is to be expected, but they will be very carefully examined so that any patterns can be identified. The Test and Protect is also working to break the chains of transmissions, but we must all play our part by remembering facts. Within the Scottish Government, a public health campaign has been created for the acronym of FACTS, simply meaning to wear your face coverings in public areas, avoid crowded places, clean your hands and touch surfaces, and stay 2 meters in socially distancing. And if you have developed any of the coronavirus symptoms, you must self-isolate. The testing of COVID-19 within Scotland has taken place by the National Health Service and the Care Home Portal and Home Test. From the 19th of June until the 8th of July, a number of tests have taken place every day in Scotland and have varied from around 3,500 to around nearly 6,000. From the 9th of July, a distinct increase in the number of tests that were having a spike purely because of the backlog of the results from the UK government of testing the program which is not available beforehand. The increase that has been happening since Sunday just confirmed that the cases followed over 1,000 tests. The majority of tests came out positive in Scotland, but it continues to fluctuate daily and have been below 1% since June. The World Health Organization has also stated that one measure which should be indicated whether the epidemic is controlled or not is that the comprehensive testing system, less than 5% of the samples should return positive for the coronavirus in over 2 weeks. Professor Linda Black of the Public Health University of Edinburgh stated that the country was going through a risky period, with the lockdown restrictions being eased and the increase of interaction with people. At an earlier time last week, the Scottish Government had allowed its biggest easing of lockdown restrictions to happen, with the opening of pubs, cafes and restaurants now reopening their doors for the first time in 4 months. Despite this, Professor Bold has told the BBC Scotland that the increase of positive cases could be the factor of increase of testing that would be happening. Yesterday, there were 16,000 test records, she said. So we've seen a big increase in testing over the last few days. And when you have more testing, you're going to have more cases. The professor had stated on the cases from Sunday were a spread throughout the country and not just a cluster in one confined area. Although, with that being said, the increase over the last 2 days were showing a slight concern. Let's emphasize that they're not a worrying level at the moment, but we need to absolutely track it and be ready to respond if they go much higher, she added. Back to you, Alma.
All right. So you mentioned that although Scotland is seeing a largest COVID case rise in a month now, you also mentioned that the biggest easing of lockdown restrictions is happening there. So what are the latest rules and what can you do now in Scotland?
Yes, so the opening of cafes, restaurants, and indoor pubs for the first time in almost 4 months. This means that Scotland has entered phase 3 of the route map out of lockdown, which is almost the awaited chapter that the majority of the public here have been waiting for. According to the BBC, businesses can ask for an exemption of 2 meters social distancing, but will also need to warn their customers that they are entering a 1 meter zone provided revised seating plans and enhanced ventilation. Hairdressers and barbers have also been reopened, with have also been able to be followed, and customers will be asked to give their contact details also. All holiday accommodations can reopen, as well as the museums, cinemas, galleries, libraries, and monuments. Places of worship are also being opened for the communal prayer and services with a limit to 50 people with a limit to 50 people there. Singing will also be restricted, and those attending will also be asked for their contact details too. Restrictions on attending the services and ceremonies for weddings, funerals, and civil partnerships have also been relaxed, while the childcare sector has been fully reopened. The wearing of face coverings became a mandatory in shops since the 10th of July, but this has already been the cases on buses, trains, trams, planes, and taxis. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said that it was expected that Phase 3 might go on longer than 3 weeks. A result of this is the formal review due to be announced on the 30th of July. Over to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Caroline, for your updates there in Scotland. Keep it coming and stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy as well, Alma. I am Caroline Kennedy here from Scotland, and we live in interesting times.
An aerosol-based drug treatment could drastically reduce the number of new coronavirus patients dying from the disease or requiring intensive care, according to preliminary results released by a British biotech firm. In a randomized trial of 100 patients admitted to hospital with COVID-19, those who received an inhaled formula of the protein interferon beta were at 79% lower risk of developing severe disease compared to those who received a placebo. Now, the new drug is a special formulation of interferon beta delivered directly to the airways via a nebulizer, which makes the protein into an aerosol. Now, they were also more than twice as likely to make a full recovery compared with the control group. The firm behind the treatment, known as SNG-001 or 001, said the preliminary results suggested a major breakthrough in the pandemic. Richard Marsden, CEO of Synergen, said, quote, "We are all delighted with the trial results announced today, which showed that SNG-001 greatly reduced the number of hospitalized COVID-19 patients who progressed from requiring oxygen to requiring ventilation." Now, the results published Monday have not yet been peer-reviewed, and the sample size is relatively small. But if confirmed, the treatment could revolutionize the way COVID-19 is dealt with in hospitals. Interferon beta is a naturally occurring protein commonly used to treat multiple sclerosis. Now, it forms part of the body's natural fight against infection, and the coronavirus suppresses its production in an attempt to evade an immune response. Delivering the protein directly into the lungs of patients is designed to trigger a robust immune response to the virus, even in patients whose immune system is already weakened by the infection. And Russia, the world's fourth hardest hit country in terms of coronavirus infections, on Monday reported fewer than 6,000 new cases for the first time since the end of April. Health authorities also said 85 people died over the past 24 hours, the lowest daily fatality figure since May 4. The country's COVID-19 death toll is now 12,427, while the number of infections stands at 777,486. Russia's fatality rate has remained low compared to other badly hit countries, raising speculation that Moscow could be underreporting figures. Russian authorities began easing antivirus measures in June ahead of a massive World War II military parade in Moscow and a nationwide vote on constitutional reforms that now allow President Putin to stay in power until 2036. Now, both events were initially postponed due to the pandemic. Moscow plans to open cinemas and theaters on August 1. In the capital, masks are mandatory in stores and on public transport, but not in the streets. The country reported 5,940 new infections on Monday. The last time Russia reported fewer than 6,000 was on April 29. Meanwhile, Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro shows a pack of hydroxychloroquine, which he says he is taking after testing positive for COVID-19, to his supporters in Brasilia. Bolsonaro also removes his face mask to talk to the crowd. Take a look.
Vamos azar com essa pandemia, mas vamos sair dessa. Temos uma excelente equipe de ministros, a começar com o da saúde.
And the United States on Sunday recorded 63,872 new coronavirus cases in the previous 24 hours, according to Johns Hopkins University in its real-time tally. Now that put the total number of cases in the U.S., the nation hardest hit by the global pandemic, at 3,762,081, according to the Baltimore-based university at 8:30 p.m. local time. Another 514 deaths were reported, bringing the total fatalities to 140,474. The U.S. has recorded more than 60,000 new cases every day for the last 6 days, peaking at a record 77,638 infections on Friday. President Trump, in a Fox News interview broadcast on Sunday, again defended his handling of the pandemic, claiming that the U.S. was, quote, the envy of the world on testing. Referring to his early prediction that the virus would disappear, he said, "I'll be right eventually," unquote. He again opposed any national mandate for mask wearing, saying, quote, "I want people to have a certain freedom." And after months of working from home, stir-crazy Americans have finally reached the long, hot days of summer, only to watch their vacation horizons dim, with travel options shrinking as the country's coronavirus cases soar. Trips abroad are mostly out. The overwhelming majority of countries now bar American citizens amid a sharp U.S. resurgence of COVID-19. The country's caseload has climbed to over 3.7 million, more than one-fourth of the world's total, and deaths have reached over 140,000. And as for cross-country trips, it's not that simple. In the vast U.S., laws on mask wearing and social distancing vary dramatically and sometimes confusingly from one jurisdiction to another. Some states are even imposing quarantines on visitors. Hawaii, for example, has ordered those arriving on the Pacific archipelago to self-quarantine. Now, Hawaii Governor David Ige announced that beginning on September 1, visitors will also have to submit to a coronavirus test within 72 hours of departing for the state and present a proof of a negative result upon arrival in Hawaii. Let's listen in.
Travelers are exempt from the 14-day mandatory quarantine if they are able to test negative after taking a COVID-19 test no more than 72 hours prior to travel to the islands. The test must be a nucleic acid amplification test, or NAT test, and must be conducted by a CLIA-certified laboratory. If test results are not available by the time of arrival in the islands, the traveler will remain in quarantine until their test results are received and verified. The test results are negative, they would then be exempt from the quarantine. All travelers are subject to pre-test requirement, including children of all ages, and travelers are responsible for all of the costs of the test. No commercial testing will be provided after arrival here in Hawaii. The pre-travel test is just a small part of a multi-layered screening process that we are implementing to keep the people of Hawaii safe and healthy. Upon arrival, temperature checks will also be administered. Travelers with temperatures higher than 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit and exhibiting other COVID-19 symptoms may be subject to a secondary screening by healthcare staff. All travelers will be required to complete the state travel and health form. That is a way for us to identify and remain in contact with all travelers once they arrive here in the islands.
Meanwhile, New York has extended its list of U.S. states, totaling 22 now, whose citizens will be required to self-quarantine after arriving in the northeastern state. And in the city of Chicago, visitors from 17 states must self-isolate for 2 weeks or face fines of up to $500 a day. And complicating many Americans' travel plans, the summer destinations of Florida and California are among the hardest hit by COVID-19, even if the popular Disney World Park in Orlando, Florida, has partially reopened, and a Disney-linked shopping district in California reopened earlier this month. As for ocean cruises, a highly popular travel option, in normal years, they remain banned by a federal no-sail order through September. And from engineers on cargo ships to waiters on luxury cruise liners, ocean-based workers around the world have been stranded offshore by coronavirus border closures and lockdowns for months, caught up in what the United Nations warns is a growing humanitarian crisis that has been blamed for several suicides.
Napakahirap po. Kasi po, nag-aalala din po kami sa aming mga pamilya. Paano lang po pag mahawaan sila? Magagawa ba ako? Kasi ako, nasa alanganin sitwasyon din po. Kaya ang tanging ginagawa naman po na lang po, tsaka tiwala na lang po kayo. Sa pagiging seaman ko po siguro, ito na po yung pinakamahirap. Kasi sa araw-araw po, hindi mo sure yung mga pangyayari Nangangamba ka kung makakauwi ka pa ba, kung hanggang kailan ka tatagal sa barko. Hirap po, malungkot, talagang malungkot. Mental health, dyan sir, dyan ka susubukan. Susubukan talagang tatag mo, lalo na yung nag-uumpisa. Yung halos may nagpapakamatay. Grabe, halos hindi makatulog. Ginagawa po na lang namin, nagtutulungan lang kami on board. Tapos kung maganda signal, tawag sa pamilya, chat, ehersisyo, mga ganun sir.
Now, many have been trapped on vessels for months after their tours were supposed to end as travel restrictions disrupted normal crew rotations. Seafarers typically work for 6 to 8 months at a stretch before disembarking and flying back to their home countries, with new crews taking their place. But as the virus whipped around the world and paralyzed international travel, that was suddenly impossible. Underscoring the growing urgency of the situation, more than a dozen countries at a UK-hosted International Maritime Summit this month vowed to recognize seafarers as key workers to help them get home. Eagle News will be right back.
Tomorrow, I love you. Tomorrow, you're always a day away.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back. Bickering EU leaders are trying to get their deadlock summit on a huge coronavirus rescue package back on track after a furious row about grants for member states threatened to derail it. The 27 were together for another session of talks after 3 days and nights of prolonged wrangling failed to agree to a 750 billion euro or $860 billion bundle of loans and grants to drag Europe out of the recession caused by the pandemic. The group is divided between the coalition of frugals, the Netherlands, Sweden, Austria, Denmark, and Finland, which has sought to cut the size of the package and impose strict rules on how it is used, and virus-ravaged powers like Italy and Spain seeking European support. France and Germany are backing efforts by European Council President Charles Michel to broker a compromise by cutting the grant portion of the deal to 400 billion euros, down from his initial proposal of 500 billion, and raising the loan part to 350 billion, up from 250 billion. Now, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte has provided the strongest opposition to the plans on the table, said to be insisting on a cap of 350 billion euros worth of grants, preferring loans of strict conditions. And differences were so great that the resumption of the talks on Sunday by all 27 leaders together was pushed back several hours as small groups worked on new compromise proposals. Meanwhile, another stumbling block emerged when Hungary's hardline premier Viktor Orban accused Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte of waging a personal vendetta against him and his country, and then vowed to prevent any agreement on efforts to the EU spending to recipient countries' respect for EU standards. Take a look.
I don't know what is the personal reason for the Dutch Prime Minister to hate me or Hungary, but he is attacking so harshly and making very clear that because Hungary, in his opinion, does not respect the rule of law, must be punished financially. That's his position, which is not acceptable, because there is no decision about what is the rule of law situation in Hungary. There are some countries, basically the Dutch anyway, who would like to create a mechanism here which provide an influence to the Dutch to control the spending of the money basically by the South. So it's basically a dispute between the Dutch and the Italians. And what concerns Hungary, we are firmly standing on behalf of the Italians in this dispute. That if the deal is blocked, it's not because of me, but because of the Dutch guy, because he initiated something. So I'm standing on the status quo as it is today, in regulation of rule of law, financial control of the budget, and all that kind of thing. So I think it's okay. They would like to reach something which is not good quality enough in our understanding. So if there is a break, it's because of them, not because of me. So I don't like blame game. But the Dutch man is the real responsible man for whole mess we have. We have already invested 2 days, and this is the 3rd day. And I think probably to make a deal on the still opening 4 questions requests several more days. But we Hungarians are ready to stay. We manage our hotel for a week. So if we have to make a deal because of negotiating for a week, we are ready to stay. So we would not like to go home without having a solution for Europe.
The marathon talks chaired by EU Council President Charles Michel have failed to yield agreement over the size and rules for the 750 billion euro package of loans and grants to help drag Europe out of a recession caused by the pandemic. Round after round of small group meetings went on all day as Michel, aided by German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Emmanuel Macron, tried to drag the frugals and the more indebted and virus-ravaged on board for a compromise. But progress was painfully slow. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte wants member states to have a veto on national economic plans by the likes of Italy and Spain in order to oblige them to pursue reforms to borrowing and their labor and pensions markets, an effort that was angrily resisted by his Italian counterpart Giuseppe Conte. A warning came from the EU's budget commissioner that the pandemic is not over. Johannes Hahn tweeted on Saturday that infections may rise in some countries, so it was, quote, high time to reach an agreement which allows us to provide the urgently needed support for our citizens and economies, unquote. Banks in Hong Kong on Monday shut its branches and told staff to stay at home after it recorded a big jump in COVID-19 cases. The finance hub's leader said on Sunday coronavirus is spreading out of control in Hong Kong with a record 100 new cases confirmed. HSBC temporarily today closed two business centers for commercial banking and 3 mobile branches, as well as shortened the opening hours at all its branches. Standard Chartered, meanwhile, has also cut operating times. Citigroup staff were told to stay at home on Monday. UBS reportedly had about 60% of staff working from home, compared with 20% earlier this month. Meanwhile, Emirates NBD, Dubai's largest bank, said its net profits plunged in the second quarter as it made huge provisions to counter the potential impact of the coronavirus crisis. The United Arab Emirates' second-largest lender saw its net profit in the second quarter this year dive by 58% to $545 million from $1.3 billion a year ago. Its net profit in the 6 months ending June 2020 also slumped by 45.3% to $1.1 billion from $2 billion the same period last year, according to its statement. The bank also said it has set aside $1.14 billion in impairments for potential risks from the coronavirus pandemic. CEO Shane Nelson said the bank provided support to 1/10 of customers, primarily through the deferral of over $2.2 billion of interest and principal for periods of up to 6 months. The UAE Central Bank said on April 5 that it had doubled to $70 billion a stimulus package aimed at supporting the economy and domestic banks in the face of the coronavirus pandemic. In other news, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un berated officials for their careless construction of a flagship hospital in Pyongyang and ordered those responsible to be sacked, according to its state media. The latest scheme is the Pyongyang General Hospital in a prime location across the Taedong River from Mansu Hill, where giant statues of the North's founder Kim Il-sung and his son and successor Kim Jong-il, father of the current leader, look out over the capital. Completion is scheduled for October 10 to mark the 75th anniversary of the founding of the ruling Workers' Party. And Kim called its construction a crucial task for the country's public health program at a groundbreaking ceremony in March. But after being briefed on the progress during a visit to the construction site, Kim pointed out serious problems, and the commission in charge had organized the finances, quote, in a careless manner with no budget for the construction properly set up. Kim was quoted as saying the project had been initiated for the good of the people but was burdening them with demands for assistance, according to Kim. No details were provided, but the North Korean leader ordered the ruling party Center Committee to investigate and replace all the officials responsible. China warned that Britain was heading down a wrong path as Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab was expected to announce the suspension of an extradition treaty with Hong Kong, raising tensions between the countries. Wang Wenbin, spokesman for China's foreign ministry, told a regular press briefing that Beijing would firmly counter any interference in its internal affairs, also slamming suggestions it was mistreating minorities in Xinjiang as slander. A new security law imposed by China on Hong Kong last month has drawn widespread criticism in Britain and elsewhere, And Mr. Rab is due later Monday to announce a package of measures similar to those already introduced by the United States, Canada, and Australia. And they're expected to include the suspension of an extradition treaty. Tensions between Hong Kong's former and current rulers have soared over a number of topics recently, and Britain recently vowed to sustain pressure from Washington and ordered the phased removal of Chinese telecoms giant Huawei from its 5G network despite warnings of retaliation from Beijing. Now, China's foreign ministry also hit back at comments by Mr. Rab that accused Beijing of human rights abuses against ethnic and religious minorities in the northwest region of Xinjiang. Mr. Rab told the BBC on Sunday that it was clear, quote, that there are gross, egregious human rights abuses going on. It is deeply, deeply troubling, unquote. Let's listen in.
英方的有关言论完全是造谣污蔑。中方已经反复阐述了在新疆问题上的立场。涉疆问题根本不是什么人权、宗教、民族问题，而是反暴力恐怖主义和反分裂的问题。比如英方称道所谓的新疆强制绝育的问题，但事实是，40年来，新疆地区的维吾尔族的人口从555万增长到了1165万，约占自治区总人口的46.8%。所谓的强制绝育的报道，完全是一派胡言。
Eagle News will be right back.
Tomorrow, tomorrow, I love ya. Tomorrow, you're always a day away.
Malaking parte ng pamumuhay namin ang agrikultura. Sa mother side ko, ang kanilang kalakal ay animal husbandry. Sila po ay nag-aalaga ng mga baka. Magmula po sa Pangasinan, napunta po ng Nueva Ecija. Ang father side ko naman po, mula po sa Spain, pagdating nila dito sa Pilipinas, sila po yung tinatawag na uring may lupa. Talagang nabuhay po kami, ibinuhay po sa amin ang agrikultura. Mga mahal kong kababayan, ito po si Robin Padilla, inaanyayahan ko po kayong manood ng Unlad, Kaagapay sa Hanap Buhay. Dito po sa Net 25.
May kaagapay sa hanap buhay.
Welcome back. A stream of NFL stars, including New Orleans quarterback Drew Brees and Seattle Signal caller Russell Wilson, took to Twitter to express concern over scant NFL health protocols for looming training camps. Brees said, "We need football, we need sports, we need hope. The NFL's unwillingness to follow the recommendations of their own medical experts will prevent that. If the NFL doesn't do their part to keep players healthy, there is no football in 2020. It's that simple." Meanwhile, Wilson, 31, cited his wife Ciara's pregnancy as a reason. He's concerned that the league hasn't put plans in place to prevent the spread of coronavirus as teams prepare for an on-schedule start to the 2020 season in September. He said, "My wife is pregnant," Wilson tweeted, "at NFL training camp is about to start, and there's still no clear plan on player health, family safety. We want to play football, but we also want to protect our loved ones." All 32 NFL teams participated in a conference call Friday that provided updates regarding the latest information related to the ongoing pandemic and the start of the 2020 season. Following that call, NFL spokesperson Brian McCarthy tweeted out a statement from the league saying the NFL will continue to implement the health and safety protocols developed jointly with the NFLPA and based on the advice of leading medical experts, including review by the CDC. One item of contention on proposed measures to keep coronavirus in check among the league is the amount of testing. The players' union wants players tested daily, while the NFL is planning to test them every other day. And a new poll shows just 1 in 4 people in Japan want to see the coronavirus delayed Tokyo Games held next year, with most backing either further delay or a cancellation. Take a look. And sumo begins a new tournament in front of a live audience in Tokyo despite a steady rise in coronavirus infections in the country, with fans voicing both joy and caution about watching the Japanese spectacle during the pandemic. Take a look.
Ah, でも怖いよね、やっぱりね。でもやっぱり、お相撲好きだからね、見たいからね。じゃなくてやっぱり臨場感っていうか、なんていうの、参加して楽しむものだから、ライブと一緒ね。野球とかもそうだし、テレビで見てても、テレビで見るだけじゃなくてやっぱり参加して、一緒に臨場感を味わいたいんだよね。スポーツ観戦ってそういうものだよね。
And finally, in our news, the first Arab space mission to Mars blasted off from Japan on a mission to unravel the secrets of weather on the red planet. Take a look.
Main engine start. Yeah, main engine ignition. SRB 点火。SRB ignition and lift off. H2A ロケット42号機は2020年1月20日午前6時58分14秒に種子島宇宙センターから打ち上げられました。
Yes, we launched our first mission to Mars, and of course, the next we will focus on the science part of this mission. However, UAE government a few years ago announced long-term plan for space exploration. This is the first stage, and we will continue developing our space sector, focusing on more science, more space exploration, as we are getting, the result and the data coming back from Emirates Mars mission.
Thank you for 3 weeks waiting in Japan before today's launch in inconvenient situation due to the coronavirus. I believe this launch success contribute to the better relationship between UAE and Japan.
We will study the relationship between the lower layer and the upper layer of the atmosphere and the escape rate of hydrogen and oxygen. For the first time, the scientific community around the world will get a holistic view of the Martian atmosphere at different times of the day, at different seasons. So this is our scientific investigation. This is our science objective for the mission. If one day humanity decides to put a human on Mars, then we'd like to contribute to that effort by bringing new knowledge and bringing new technologies and bringing new capability to serve that purpose.
That's all the time we have for you tonight. Before we close, we leave you with a word of hope. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. See you again tomorrow evening. Good night. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.